I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Throughout my career, I've been very fortunate. I've worked in front of the cameras as a pro wrestler, referee, ring announcer, and commentator. And I've also worked behind the scenes as a promoter, booker, agent, coach, and consultant. And I bring the sum total of all those experiences, and I serve it up right here to you on Till We Make It. So if you're down with that, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and join the Till We Make It tribe. Subscribe right now. When I was just starting out, back in the mid-90s, I frequented the Pittsburgh scene, and that's where I used to bump into this guy, Andrew Lazarchik, all the time. He was working as a ringside manager, then known as Hotshot Drew Lazario, and I was working as a pro wrestler, then known as Mike Quackenbush. These days, Andrew is much better known as the founder and owner of Wildcat Belts, and if you know anything about championship title belts, you know they're the industry leader. Wildcat makes the belts for WWE brands Raw, SmackDown, NXT, whatever they come up with next, makes belts for New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, etc. And there's no one more knowledgeable about the production of championship title belts than my old friend, Andrew. So I wanted to ask him a couple questions specific to the production of championship title belts. And if you're the least bit curious about those belts, then you're in luck, because my conversation with Andrew is starting right now.
Well, thanks for making time to talk about even more of this with me. I want to now focus a little bit on production time for title belts, how long it takes, that sort of thing. So if this morning, rather than us chit-chatting, I called you up and said, Andrew, I need a championship title belt. Like right now, how many belts are in front of me in your pipeline? Really? Like today, how many are on the table?
Well, every day is different. I mean, there's certain days, like some people, I'll get large orders for car dealership and the guy orders 20 belts. You know what I mean?
What does a car dealership need 20 belts for?
Like a salesman of the year type thing. You know, like if he owns like a bunch of different dealerships. I shouldn't even say dealership. It's really like a regional part of one of a car company, and like the top 20 of their, sellers.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Kind of.
Yeah, sort of. You know what I mean? But, sometimes there might be as many as 30 or 40 orders going on right now in some different phase or more. I mean, it just depends, or there's other, one belt going on, but it's got a lot involved, or it's for a high end client. And, we got to worry about that. And so it's like, there's a lot involved, but there's always a lot going on, essentially, is the answer. But the first question I always ask is, what's your budget and when do you need it? Because those are the two most important things. And I don't say that. A lot of people hear that and think, oh, well, if he tells me he has a lot of money, then I can charge him more. It's not that. It's a lot of people might want a belt next week, but they don't want to spend $1,500. You know what I mean? So you couldn't get a $1,500 belt next week, but that's not what you want anyway. So that's kind of the barometer question I ask. Yeah. So I know, okay, where are we coming from here? Because you might need a belt in 6 weeks or 10 weeks, but you still can't afford a $1,500 belt. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's not exactly the time. So those are like the two most important questions that are asked. What's your budget and when do you need it? So that's why we offer 4 different style belts. So we have our premium style, which is the top of the line, what you see on TV. Those are approximately 8 to 10 weeks. If you came to me today and you need a belt, I was going to tell you it's going to be about 8 to 10 weeks. It could be a little bit longer, could be a little bit shorter. It really, it's a lot of fluctuation. It just depends what else is going on, how quickly certain things get done. There's a lot involved in that, but that's kind of the standard answer is 8 to 10 weeks.
So I want to add something there, right? So let's talk about that for a second, right? The top of the line ones, your premium style belts. Let's say I'm reaching out on day one, but what I want is, it's very unique. There's going to be a lot of customization. At an extreme end, what do you think is like the maximum amount of time? Like maybe even thinking back, what's the longest it's ever taken to realize a really complicated premium style championship title belt?
Well, honestly, a lot of that goes back on the client because, okay, so you say you want this crazy fancy belt and we discuss that. Then we have to create the artwork, which obviously, the more involved, the more time it's going to take on our end. Then it gets sent to you. Maybe that takes 2-3 weeks. Then it gets sent to you. And depending on what your situation is, if in the wrestling world, it's probably not that many people involved in the decision making. But like sometimes we have corporate clients where,
Right.
I'm dealing with this guy who needs to show it to his boss, who needs to show it to their director, who has to get the vice president of, whatever to say the okay, and then it's got to come back down. So, I've had belts. I have one right now, as a matter of fact, in that situation where the guy, I think he sent his deposit in December of last year. And here we are, 9 months later, and he's still like, I'll hear from him every 6 weeks. Like, okay, well, we want to change this color. I'm like, okay. So then I change a color, send a proof, and I go, oh, I guess I won't hear from him till Thanksgiving. So
Right.
it really just it's a give and take too. So it obviously takes us amount of time, but then the quicker you can approve it or give your feedback to make adjustments, then the quicker the quicker it is that we can get it completed.
Do you find that, and maybe the answer to this is no, and that's fine. Is there a certain time of year when you just tend to have fewer belts in the pipeline? So if somebody was hoping, I'm going to wait until this time of year for the lowest turnaround time, you'd say order in February, order in July. Like, when is that in your year? I
would say, honestly, it's definitely, there's no rhyme or reason to it, but just traditionally speaking, and now that I say this, it won't happen this year. Mm-hmm. But traditionally speaking, I would say if you order like December-ish, then that gives us time to complete it, January-ish, instead of like typically if you order December 1st, we would tell you 8 to 10 weeks. So you're looking at middle of February. If you order, then that seems to be when we have the least amount of orders going traditionally, but not necessarily. But that's not really. I wouldn't use that as your approach as to when to order a belt either. You know what I mean? Because it might save you a couple days or a week or two, but nothing significant.
And what's the difference production time wise? I mean, from like top of the line, a premium style belt to something from the economy line. Does it make any difference, or it's really just about the pipeline? Like if there's 30 belts in front, there's 30 belts in front of you, and that takes time.
Well, there is a difference. Yes, there's definitely a difference, which is why we asked that question. What's your budget and what's your time frame? So if even if your budget's $2,000, but you need it next week, I'm going to say, well, we can't get the premium style, but we can do our economy style because there's a lot less involved. Really, your time is the artwork, really the development of the artwork and going back and forth with the client. That's one thing we didn't talk about. Maybe we can take a sidebar real quick. So
let's do a sidebar.
Maybe you're gonna. Okay, I'm gonna go to this side. You go to that side. Okay. Now, anyways, the way that it works, I don't know if we can probably cut this up, but the way that it works, like when you come to me and you want to place an order, so you send your deposit, and then you tell us what you want. So okay, you can be as specific or general as you are. You can type it up in a couple paragraphs. You can do a stick figure sketch. You can supply finished art. Maybe you're an artist or a designer and you have the ability to do the finished art. And then we take that, we do what we have to do to make sure that it will be engraved properly or tweak it, however we feel needed. And then we'll email you a proof. So you're going to see in color exactly what you're going to get. You know what I mean? When these plates are made, this is what they're going to look like. And you could say, yeah, that looks great. Or you could say, no, I want to change this, or that word doesn't make sense, or we don't want a globe there. We want a crown or something, whatever you want.
Right.
Then we'll just make that change, send you the proof. Then you, again, approve it or make additional changes. And then once you approve it, it goes to production. So that's kind of that front end of that could take as long or not as long as you want it to. You know what I mean?
Right. You can go back and forth indefinitely.
Yes, which we've had that issue too, and that's that it just makes it take longer. You know what I mean? So you don't want to get too picky. The one thing is we are professionals and we have almost 20 years experience doing this. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We get a lot of people that want to reinvent the wheel. Like, no, listen, trust us. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. We'll do whatever you want. These are custom made. If you think you want this, we'll do it, but at least listen to us, and we're trying to steer you in the right direction. So I'm sorry. So we kind of took a sidebar there. So let's get back to the middle. So what was the question?
I have no idea, but thank you for that. But that did make me think of something else as you were saying that. just in terms of like what it takes to produce, what is the most time consuming? Is it the plates themselves? Yes. Like, I guess I want to discount from this, right, the process of getting art done, because there's no controlling that. You could send something to a client to be proofed, and if it sits in their inbox unanswered for months, there's that. But placing that aside, is it just it's getting the art onto the plates themselves that takes the longest amount of time?
It does, yeah. Getting the plates fabricated, that is just something that has to be done outside of our control. So it just kind of...
I don't want you to give away a trade secret here, right? If this is part of your process, but like you don't do that like right there on that table behind me that I see there behind you.
That's a whole huge involved process that requires all kinds of specialty machinery and things like that. So that's definitely the longest part of the whole process. Is once we get it approved, then you got to get the plates made, and that kind of takes as long as it takes. You know, we can push it through sometimes. We can sometimes throw money at it, you know, if the client is willing to, but it's not going to save that much time. It kind of just is what it is, unfortunately.
So let's say I'm going with something on the lower end, right? I'm talking about an economy style belt here, and I'm in a rush. What is the fastest you think you've ever turned one of those around?
Fastest we could do that can go very quickly. You know, without any increased rush charges for overnight shipping and things like that. You know, we could get something like that done, you know, in a week. Like if you came to me Monday and you needed it by the weekend, we realistically could get it to you by the weekend. We'd probably have to have some overnight shipping fees and things like that in there. But standard time frame, you're looking at 2 to 3 weeks.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not that long. The Victory style as well. That one's about the same time, 2 to 3 weeks. That can get done relatively quickly. Yeah.
And is the difference there? You control more of it in-house, right? You're not sending it out to have plates fabricated by some, you know, a machinist or whatever. Right. You're able to control more of the details of the belt in-house.
There's less steps involved, being that there's no color on the belts. We don't have to paint it. You know what I mean? It's just that's part of the deal. It's like, this is what it's going to look like. This is it. So this is what you'll get. So there's less time involved on our end. Production time.
Sure. What do you think is the part of the production, like the whole system, that entire process end to end, that most people just don't understand?
The time, because these are custom made pieces that are being made with other custom made pieces. You know, that your order isn't the only order going on. You know, like I said, there can be 30, 40, 50 orders going on at once. So when you come to me and I tell you it's going to be several weeks, and you're like, well, it doesn't take that long to make it. I'm like, well, I mean, if we were doing nothing else, I suppose it wouldn't take that long to make it. But, you know, we got this belt's being plated and this one's being painted, and we've got to do the leather on this one. You know, there's constant moving parts, moving wheels, you know, that are, your order is just one part of all these different wheels that are moving.
Right on. Do you remember what's the most you've ever had at one time?
You know, I usually don't keep count. So it's like for me to even tell you right now, I'd have to really go in and count things and things like that. So I really don't know. But there was a time I know, and we got 2 really big orders at once. I want to say it was like an order for 20 belts and another order for 15 belts, like within a week. And it's like, wow, that's a lot. So yeah.
Right. Being the car dealership salesman of the year is where it's at, man. You get the big push.
That's right, baby.
Put the strap on.
We don't know who's going to be the winner of the year till January 1st. So, you know, they couldn't order anything before then. So we couldn't even jump ahead.
My thanks to Andrew at Wildcat Belts for making time in his very busy schedule to share some of his experience and expertise with us here at Till We Make It. I've compiled all the videos I've got on championship title belts into one playlist. Click on the video that's appearing on screen right now and you will jump into those exact videos. Down below, you will find links to Wildcat Championship Belts online, as well as their social media, as well as a bunch of links to my books over on Amazon and Audible. They make great gifts for the wrestler in your life, even if that wrestler happens to be you.